would like to, do we have any public with us this morning that would like to make comment? Hearing none, we will then move on to the Regional Park and Ride Plan update, the discussion item that Marshall will be leading for us. Good morning, Marshall.
Good morning. All right, let me share my screen here. Can everyone see this?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so yeah, good morning. Again, I'm Marshall Distel, Senior Transportation Planner here at CCRPC, and I'll be managing our update to the Park and Ride and Intercept Facility Plan. We had been talking about initiating this plan update for the past few years, but thought it would, make the most sense to kick things off during the final phase of the I-89 study. So we're excited and eager to collaborate with the TAC on this update. I feel that park and rides are often an overlooked strategy to reduce VMT. So, feel like they should be front and center on future TDM strategies. After all, the easiest way to double the efficiency of a car is to add another person to it. So with that in mind, let's dive into this. So here's just the outline for the presentation. We're going to review the process that we envision for updating the Park and Ride Plan. We'll touch on the previous plan that was last updated by RSG in 2011. We'll take a look at draft vision and goals that we've assembled, and we'll review the project schedule, and lastly, take a look at next steps as well. Here's just a look at the main tasks and the project team roles. We have RSG as the lead consultant on the study, with Stephen Falble from Stedman Hill serving a supporting role. We think that Stephen's a great addition to this team and is really an expert on all things public transit related. So we plan to tap into his knowledge as we think about park and rides within the realm of our public transit system and potential impacts from the emergence of things like ride hailing and on-demand mobility. So the first task that CCRPC is leading is on the development of the vision and goals, which we are soliciting TAC review and input later on in this presentation. We then have a conditions analysis, which is very, very data-heavy task led by RSG. Next task includes intercept facility investigation. So while park and rides typically would be located in a rural or suburban context close to the start of a trip, intercept facilities are a bit different in that they should be located close to the end of a trip. So within an urban center or on the fringe of that center, and really the goal of the intercept facility should be reducing the need for vehicle trips within the urban core. And we then have prioritization, which will come back to the TAC for a review and some input on that. And then final deliverables, which will be presented back to the TAC and CCRPC board as well. So the 2011 study was also led by RSG. It included a pretty robust system inventory to identify our park and ride needs. The report noted a number of service gaps as well as the need for more convenient park and ride lot locations around the county. We identified and ranked 22 new facilities based on things like AADT, level of transit service, bike ped connections, highway access, proximity to activity centers, and a few other site-specific factors. And we also identified 5 intercept facilities and rank them as part of this plan. In the in the years following the completion of this, we've made some good progress. We've had the Exit 11 park and ride has been expanded, improved. We have a new facility in Colchester near I-9 Exit 16. The new lot at Exit 12 in Williston is nearing construction. We've also moved forward with some more focused park and ride studies in Charlotte. We've had an Exit 14 intercept facility study. We've had a supplemental park and ride study at Exit 17 as well. So there's quite a few updates, but with that being said, there's still a number of locations that were highly prioritized during the 2011 plan that we've yet to address. So looking forward to taking a look at those again as part of this plan. So after reviewing the previous plan's vision statement, we've drafted a new and much more concise statement, which I think is still representative of a robust vision. I'll just go ahead and read this for you. So in the future, a comprehensive network of safe and accessible park and ride and intercept facilities will allow for seamless multimodal transportation connections for the benefit of residents, employees, and visitors of Chittenden County. The network will enhance mobility for all users, support economic development, improve access to public transportation, and reduce single occupancy vehicle travel in support of transportation-related energy goals outlined in the 2018 ECOS plan. So, I'm not really looking to get into wordsmithing right now. Is there anything that the TAC feels we are missing in the statement as it's currently written?
I don't see any hands. Is there anyone that I'm not seeing that would like to make a comment?
Or just, any thoughts in general on this? Do you feel this is, again, this is quite a bit shorter than it previously was. I feel like the previous plan, it was too long and drawn out. This seems more like a concise, robust vision.
In
Hey,
line with-
Marshall, this is Amy. I'm just kind of curious. I hope there's a very good definition of what intercept facility is. 'Cause I'm not sure that there's a common knowledge of what that is. So just an observation. I know why it was here from the previous plan because there was a particular board member who had an extreme sure that there's a current updated understanding of that.
So
term.
Amy, facility term is a little esoteric in many ways. So we will definitely explain what we mean by
Great.
that.
Thank you.
Yeah, we in the last plan, we had a pretty good definition that differentiated the two front and center at the beginning of the plan.
You could also put, so people see it right.
Yeah, I think I'm on. The only question I have is, we've built a couple of park and rides, and one of the thoughts is, as we move into this new generation of vehicles, trying to electrify the fleet to the degree we can, should part of our vision statement be looking at rehabbing some of these existing park and ride facilities to include the capability for charging stations? And I don't know if that belongs as part of the vision statement or just part of the study.
That's a good point, Dennis. We can we also have some goals that if we feel that it's appropriate to put in the goals rather than the vision or vice versa, then I think that makes sense.
Yeah, and also, and I would just add that maybe a new goal, or maybe just it's going to be part of our action plan, as we are actually looking to just support the transportation-related energy goals, as the statement says. So I think that's a great idea. Thank you. Yeah, that's great. We will add that.
Great. Anything else on the vision? Okay, if not, I'll move on to the goals. So here, again, are the new proposed goals. Similar to the vision statement, we've attempted to streamline this it was a previous sprawling sheet of 11 goals, and we've kind of pared this down to 5 core goals. I should note first that we've shared the vision and goals with VTrans Park and Ride team. We got a thumbs up. So I'll go through these with you as well. So we have a core goal of safety, accessibility, and efficiency. So provide safe and efficient access for all users of all abilities, integrate facilities seamlessly into the overall transportation system. We have mobility, increase mobility options for all travelers with a specific focus on underserved or overburdened populations. We thought it was important to have an equity focus to our goals in this plan. Environmental sustainability, reduce VMT and greenhouse gases to achieve transportation-related climate goals. Economy, support economic access by reducing the need for parking within the urban core, providing multimodal options to employees commuting into Chittenden County. We have system preservation, preserve and maintain existing facilities to reduce long-term maintenance costs and support a safe and enjoyable travel experience. Any thoughts on these?
Looks like
Jonathan.
Jonathan has a question.
I think from the walk bike perspective, that sort of accessibility goal is key. We've seen in Richmond that community's long quest to connect the town to the park and ride. I'd love to see safe and efficient and also comfortable access. Recognizing that a lot of folks aren't comfortable riding in just a painted bike lane. We really need low stress facilities to connect to these park and rides and intercepts.
Thanks, Jonathan. Any other thoughts?
I do have,
Okay.
sorry, one other thought is that the accessibility and mobility piece do seem like very similar terms in this context. And I'm sure you guys thought of this as in developing it, but I almost wonder if you could just merge those two. I hear the point about equity, but if we do want to highlight equity, maybe we just need to clearly add that in to the goal statement. And also back to Dennis's point about the potential improvements at existing park and rides. Maybe this is where the system preservation piece talks a little bit more about not just preserving and maintaining the existing, but adding some improvements there to achieve these other goals.
Preserve,
Good points.
maintain, and enhance.
I'm sorry, Barbara, you said system preservation and enhancement. Is that what you're saying?
Under system preservation, it sounds like what could be changed is preserve, maintain, and enhance
Enhance,
existing
yeah.
facilities.
Yeah. And I think that the point about basically just integrating the mobility with the safety accessibility, and that's, so we're going to try and wordsmithing again. So you see a little bit revised goals next time we come to present.
Great. Ravi, you have a comment or question?
Yeah, so about the economy piece about into Chittenden County, kind of going off of Jonathan's comment about Richmond's park and ride. The park and ride itself, I think, serves not only commuters into Burlington, but also into Montpelier. And so I'm not sure if that captures the entire Odor for one. Richmond's park and ride too is well outside its downtown core. So it also kind of acts as this as a node really to help commuters within Richmond, Boston, going towards Burlington and then towards Montpelier. So I think that into Chittenden County portion should be revised a bit too, to capture the broader audience who uses the park and rides for one. And then for system preservation, I think going off of, I think it was Dennis's comment about charging stations, it might be good to have the word modernize to make sure that the facilities are being modernized in a timely fashion that coincides with the development of new transportation options.
Ravi, so on your first comment, if we put under the economy, if we put into and out of, something like that. I mean, it is Chittenden County centric, right? Our plan. So I hear what you're saying. So we'll try to figure it out. It's not just commuting into, but out of Chittenden County as well. So, okay. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you for all the comments. All right, let's move on to existing conditions. So the consultant team will update attributes of existing park and ride facilities and add new facilities to a GIS shapefile database. We've got quite a number of new and usage data since the previous plan was developed. So we'll be updating this with our site for hosting and sharing some spatial information on these facilities. As part of our existing condition analysis, using sort of a wide array of available census data, which were previously used in the 2011 plan, but have since become a bit more robust. These data are pretty powerful tools that can provide us with some insights where populations work and live, and most likely the routes that are used for commuting. We'll use things and tools like the on-the-map census tool, which we can zoom in on a specific area to conduct an analysis to see where residents work, and we can use that to determine both the direction and the magnitude of the potential commuter shed. So major generators of park and ride demands. This task, RSG will be collecting and taking a look at some relevant employment data. Demand for park and rides. We've already started coordinating with CATMA on this to take a look at if park and rides are being utilized as part of the broader TDM strategies for large employers. The consultant team is also going to benefit from new park and rides and intercept facilities. So intercept facility investigation. So based on the evaluation of commuting patterns, we'll do this analysis to identify new opportunities for some intercept lots. We've done quite a few studies since the last plan with interest for facility exit 14. Also, so we'll revisit these, and also over the past 10 years since this pretty profound changes in our transportation landscape from the rise of EV, and I think each of these is going to affect travel behavior and can influence how park and rides and intercept facilities perform in the coming years. So this task will identify how these new and emerging facilities, and we'll think about how the potential impact of autonomous vehicles could impact.
Yeah, what could you go into now at this point what an intercept facility is?
Sure, yes. So the main difference between an intercept facility and park and ride. So a park and ride typically see in a rural or suburban context, aiming to capture commuters. Intercept facility, we want to see them located, if you look at in the urban core, on the fringe of the core, to capture the end trip. So ideally, folks would be able to drive to these facilities, park their car, and then take transit or bike share into their employment centers, sort of reducing the need for parking in the downtown core.
Okay, so it's a park and ride closer to the core.
Right.
I mean, okay, thank you. No, it's just in my mind, parking in the core, but it's still a park and ride facility.
Yeah,
with all
it
those
is.
attributes we just discussed.
Yeah, Sam, I think you're absolutely right. It's a park and ride facility closer to the downtowns and the urban core. But I think one of the interesting things is that can be a much more multimodal center, right? Because you're so close to your destination, you can then take a bike. You can then take a share, like a shared car. I mean, you can change modes so you don't have to go and park where you work. So the difference is that it provides like a more optional walk sometimes, or take a bus, or so that's the difference. It's just the modes as well as the location.
Thank you.
Elaine, would it make sense to just refer to it then as a multimodal intercept facility so that it's clear that that's really what it is, rather than just have it hang out there?
Yeah, I mean that's a great point, Barbara. We'll definitely try to use terms that explain things, because intercept doesn't really explain things. It might be a good idea to do that, even though, I mean, the hope is that even park and rides will offer multimodal options, right? So we are hoping, I mean, that's kind of the tricky part, but we'll try to wordsmith it. So
I just want to make sure that the public doesn't get confused to not leverage all options. And, they may go, what is an intercept facility? I need a park and ride, as they're coming in. They may say, well, what is that? It's not a park and ride. So I want to make sure that our language is consistent for the public to leverage these opportunities to the maximum. Thanks.
Yeah, that's great points. Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to prioritization. So the 2011 plan developed a pretty robust scoring process that rolled up some key criteria into one set of scores. We're planning to revisit this process and reevaluate the complete set of new facilities that are proposed. The consultant team is also going to do a deeper dive into the top 5 facilities to develop cost estimates, land use screening, joint development opportunities, environmental and right-of-way impacts, as well as next steps and potential funding sources. After we have a draft prioritized list, we will bring this back to the TAC for a review before moving forward. So after prioritization, we'll then move on to the implementation plan. And again, we won't need to start from scratch for this, as we already have tables from the previous plan that are still relevant that we'll be updating. We will remove facilities that have already been implemented and or those that are in the process of moving forward, and we'll add any new potential facilities to the list. So for deliverables, we'll have a report that will be reviewed by the TAC. The documentation will summarize tasks completed in the study and highlight some critical new insights or changes from the last plan. And we'll also likely have some web-based tools and maps that highlight key pieces of information with some interactive data sets to better convey, the results of the study, how park and rides are performing, and whatnot. Moving on to the schedule, we have a tentative end date in June. This is pretty optimistic, I'd say, given that we've had somewhat of a late start in this fiscal year for this project. So it's not out of the realm of possibilities that this could go into the early fall, which is not really an issue. That being said, we're aiming for our next TAC up to get into the prioritization process at that point. Any other questions?
Under
Sam?
update existing conditions, will this be an assessment on how the current park and rides are functioning? For example, I think of Richmond, which when I commuted to Montpelier, I remember it overflowed a lot. You saw people parked on everywhere beyond the park and ride. So will this report give us an update on whether the existing park and rides are accommodating all the people who are trying to leverage them? Will we have an idea of how many are using them and
Yes,
what enhancements?
We've got a lot of new data, usage data that we'll be sharing and updating from the previous plan. So we'll get to see, which facilities are overflowing, which facilities are not, not hardly seeing any users, and so we'll take a dive into that.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Marshall, if I were to hop in here, we count as part of our TPI agreement, we count park and ride facilities 3 times a year in February, July, and October, I believe. So we have, with respect to say Richmond vehicle, even if they're parked not necessarily in a spot, so vehicles then available spaces.
Okay.
So that would be
Okay, because I noticed that Richmond was also a gathering place for people in Chittenden County seeking to go on and do recreational activities like skiing on a weekend. And so they all meet up at the Richmond Park and Ride and off they go. So
yeah, unfortunately, we stick to our TPI agreement, which sort of has a standardized protocol, if you will, to count between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. On a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. Okay. So we really are looking for sort of like middle of the day, weekday counts only. Right. So that's just kind of that's the data that we've been sort of.
Thank you.
Jonathan, you have a question as well?
Yeah, a little comment. I want to encourage that this plan sort of goes a little farther than the last one in terms of bike and ped and transit facility. Talk about just sort of bike racks, which are just a bike rack is really not sufficient for the kind of long-term parking that people would be doing with their bike at one of these facilities. So I think at a minimum, we should really be looking to provide really secure bike parking. I think looking at having e-bike charging could be really market now for that. Go beyond for someone in particular who's walking or biking to one of these park and ride lots. Sitting in one of those shelters during the winter months is pretty tough, and having something that's more comfortable for those users would be really important to move some folks to transit, I think.
Great, thanks, Jonathan. I think we'll take a look at what's being done around other regions of the country to see what sort of enhanced transit shelters are being developed at park and rides and facilities for cyclists as well. Okay. And I think that's it. Yes.
Are there any other comments or questions for Marshall before we move on to the VPSP2? I'm not seeing any.
Just thank you to Marshall. Nicely presented.
Thanks.
Great. So Christine.
Good morning. Brian, can you enable my screen share? Awesome. Sorry, guys, I got another presentation. We can't help ourselves, even if we try. So this is going to be a really brief item. Just to give you an update on the VPSP2 year 2, which we will be starting today, probably. So just a little bit of a reminder of what this is, and then a schedule of what's coming is what we're going to talk about today. So this is the project prioritization, the VTrans's new project prioritization methodology, which is called VPSP2. If you will remember, last year was the pilot year 1 of that process, and we scored projects in the categories roadway, traffic and safety, and paving. And so this year too, we're going to be looking at interstate, state, and town highway bridges. The way this system is set up, each of these categories are done every other year. So next year will be again roadway, traffic and safety, and paving. And just as a reminder, this is set up, or the concept behind this is to score projects with this idea of transportation value. So we're looking at the amount given to just providing to the Vermont taxpayers. And this is done by filling out a workbook that has 8 criteria that were developed so projects are scored on each of these 8 criteria. So projects live in their modes. So highway, rail, walks, trails, and paths, transit, and aviation. So right now we're just on the highway mode. So both of these, the last year's 8 and paving, are all in the highway mode. The other workbooks set up yet. So those aren't up and running yet. The walks, trails, and paths are being funded in the way that they've in the Transportation Enhancement Grant. There will likely be some tweaks to that process, but that is not happening yet. And then on the right of the slide are the 8 criteria. You'll notice that some of the boxes are green and some of the boxes are orange. And what that means is that in the orange boxes are primarily scored by regional planning commissions, and the green boxes are scored by VTrans. So this is a combined process. We all enter information into one workbook that comes up with the project score. And the points, there are different points for the criteria, and those were determined in some workshops that happened with stakeholders to determine the importance of the different criteria. So we're looking at projects so how this is happening is that VTrans is looking at asset-driven through VTrans's asset management system, so that they measure the condition of the roads and the bridges and improvements. And so those are either assets or something like that. And from VTrans, the regional driven is our opportunity to identify projects that are important to us that we would like to see added. The regionally driven and the asset driven projects are combined together, all fill ones that get added to capital program schedule, just showing. So step 1 and VTrans starts out and figures out how much money they have. Now, I guess we have to say at this point that we are not sure how much money we have, because there's a lot of money coming in. So there may be you know, this may be a placeholder for now. There may be movement in this to come, but this is our best projects. The step 2 is VTrans identifying asset-driven potential projects. These are the list that are spit out by their asset management systems. Step 3, to provide this list to the RPCs. This is happening now. It's supposed to happen this week. I just checked the website before coming here and it looks like they're starting to upload projects. So as soon as I see this list, I'll send it to you guys so you can see what's on it. So the next steps are really for the scoring of those asset-driven projects that come from VTrans, and then the identification of the regionally driven projects. Once I'm going to say a little bit more about that. So all of those scores are going to be combined, sent to VTrans for the statewide list. We'll review the statewide list. It'll come these asset-driven projects. This will be like the worst bridges in the state. It'll be 150% of the amount of money. I'm sorry, I'm going to the weeds here. I didn't mean to, but I can't help myself. It'll be 150% of the amount of money available, which means that the list is going to be bigger than the amount that we can actually fund. So from that list, we're going to be able to figure out which ones are most important to us. So we will look at that list and then we will begin to identify regionally driven potential projects. And we're going to start doing that by looking at the condition of bridges in the county, the ones that are in the worst condition. But I also need for you guys, if you have bridge projects that you think need to happen, send me those. The names of those bridges, you don't have to give me any like its technical name or anything, just say the bridge down the road from the red farmhouse and we'll figure it out. But we'll score them and we're going to talk about this at the April TAC meeting. And at the May TAC meeting, we'll review all the scores and we'll make recommendations for projects that we think should be for the priority of Chittenden County projects. And all of those will be submitted to VTrans on June 1st. So hopefully I'm not as confusing as I thought I was. Any questions? You want to tell me some bridges right now? Wayne?
Yeah, if I could ask a naive question, I actually already know the answer, but maybe I'm just hopeful. You talked about this fund may have 150% of what you originally expected. That we are working with the RPC to fix a bridge out here in Jericho. There would still be the same local share for all these projects. It's not that your percentage of funding for each of these bridges would increase. What you're saying is the RPC will consider more bridges to assist with, but the percentage of the local share will stay the same.
That's a great question. I'm glad you asked it because no, you're not going to get 150% of the cost of your bridge project, which would be really awesome, right? No, it's just of the total cost of all of the bridges. All the match requirements are staying the same.
That's what I thought. I feel silly asking it, but Santa Claus came into the room and I just had to ask that question.
And generally the match question for those who haven't been involved with it is if you don't put a temporary bridge in, if you close the route, it's a 10% local match. And if you require a temporary bridge, it's a 20% local match.
Thank you.
Chris, sorry.
Yeah, hey, Christine. And you may have mentioned this, maybe I missed it, but so what happened to the safety-driven projects? I mean, those 1 through 8 steps, at the end of the discussion here, you're talking about asset-driven and the regionally driven. Could you just go back to what happened to the safety-driven projects? Are they assumed they're just going to be funded with safety funds then, or?
I think the asset driven and the safety driven will become on a combined list that will be sent by VTrans. We don't,
okay.
While they sort of come up in a different way, I think that we're looking at that as a combined list. I mean, it's a little bit less of an issue with bridges than it is with, like the traffic safety programs. I understand what you're saying in terms of using safety funds. I don't think we would be using any safety funds for bridges. They would still be the regular funding.
All right, thanks.
Wayne? Wayne, did you have another?
No, I'm sorry. I didn't remove my hand. Thank you.
So as soon as I get this list, if your town has a bridge on the list, I will send you an email. I can send all of you the list of all of them. It's not a secret, but yeah, I'll be sure to send any bridges that are on this list so that you know.
Good. Thank you, Christine. Good morning, Pam. I believe you're going to be giving us information now on the transportation
I
resilience
am.
planning
Good
tool.
morning. Good morning, everyone. Let me see if I can share. Do I have the ability to share, Brian?
You should. I just gave it to you.
Yep. Thank you very much. Get this going here. All right. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Pam Brangen. I am the GIS data and IT manager at the Regional Planning Commission. And this morning I'm going to give you sort of some explanation, background on this transportation resilience planning tool, and then I will also cover some how this tool we hope will be used as a resource at the municipalities. I will touch on the current progress, and then I will show off the tool. So the Transportation Resilience Planning Tool, it's a web-based application, and the goal of it is to improve the resilience for Vermont's road network against flooding and the vulnerability so it is assessing the vulnerability of the roads, and it's looking at how critical the transportation network is, and combining those two and looking and assessing the risk to determine, where are the most vulnerable places within the transportation network. And then it goes the next step further in identifying some mitigation strategies that could be used. And this is a statewide project that has been led by VTrans's Policy Planning and Research Bureau with Joe Segali. And we've had funding through several federal and state sources. There's been a lot of partners and architects, as you can see on this slide. The state of Vermont agencies include ANR, Emergency Management, ACCD, and of course, VTrans. The regional planning commissions have been involved in various levels of this project, and then a whole group of very talented consultants have been working on this project. So as I mentioned, the point of the TRPT is to look at the whole transportation network and consider its vulnerability during a rain event, a flood event. And that vulnerability could be hit as 3 different ways: in an inundation, erosion, or deposition. And there's also different levels of flooding events. So it takes into consideration the 10, 50, and the 100-year flood events that could happen. And then that's also the other component looked at is the criticality of the network. How important is the transportation asset that dictates the consequence, of the disruption to mobility due to damage. So how close is it to essential facilities? And this is run through a model throughout the entire state. And then from those two, the probability of it happening is looked at in relation to the different size storms. And what comes out of all of that analysis and research is the risk. What is the risk level? And then once you have those risks identified, you can look at and consider different mitigation measures. So vulnerability, the first component, you can look at it as whether the inundation is considered, ponding, like is the road totally underwater, or is there some erosion happening? Is the embankment washing into the river? Is there undercutting happening? And then there's deposition, which is the accumulation of a lot of debris. I always think of culverts having this deposition issue, too much debris and water coming down to a culvert that just can't handle it all. And that causes issues. So all three of these are looked at in every component of the network. So the road network, the bridges, and the culverts. And it's also looked at in the different levels of storm. As I said before, is it a 10-year, a 50-year, or 100-year. So every single component of the network in the entire state is looked at for its vulnerability. And what it equals out to, there's like 27 different variations of vulnerability on every structure. And the scoring is assessed based on the 50-year, but you can adjust the application to look at the 10 or the 100-year, and that information is in there. So the information that's used to help determine the vulnerability is where, what sort of past damage has there been, and what is the local knowledge on the roads and the bridges and the streams, as well as what is the topology, how close is the road to the river, what's the elevation difference. So that's the vulnerability component of the tool. And then there's the criticality scoring, and that's determined by 3 different criteria. And the first one is the network criticality index. And that's a modeling that builds on the network robustness index, which was developed by the University of Vermont Transportation Research Center, Jim Sullivan and Novak. And this example just shows the different levels of criticality. If there's another route, so it's that you can get to a destination. If one isn't working, there's another option. So it's maybe lower criticality as opposed to, every option has some sort of damage to it. So then you got the higher criticality. The second component to the criticality score is the critical closeness accessibility, or the CCA, which is, this takes the Vermont Transportation Network, or the transportation model, was used to score the relative importance of roadway segments that provide key access to critical facilities, including hospitals, police departments, ambulances, and fire stations. This index has been calculated for all of the major roadway segments in the state. It's also available separately as a data layer if anyone's ever interested in that. And then the third component to the criticality part of the tool is the identification of locally important roads. So this final criteria component, or the criticality component, allows for a manual identification of those most critical roadways for reasons that may not be captured in either of the modeling, the NCI or the CCA, such as local detour routes or access to town highway, maintenance facilities, or access to emergency shelter. So that's where the sort of local component comes in. And all 3 of those, the NCI, the CCA, and the local importance, are combined to come up with the criticality score. So then what happens in this model, in this tool, is that the vulnerability score and the criticality scores are averaged out to give you the risk. And so every road segment and bridge and culvert will have a risk value, the highest being a 10, the lowest being 0, and that is how the app, when I show you, you'll see that the roads and bridges and culverts are color-coded based on this risk. So then you have the mitigation strategies, and they're grouped into these 4 different areas of mitigation. So I'll just kind of read through what they are and what they sort of address. So the river and road group, stabilization group, really focuses on fortifying road embankments, bridges, and culverts to resist erosion. And these tend to be applied in high-risk settings where damages due to erosion and deposition are likely. Some examples include armoring eroding riverbanks with a riprap slope or wall, installing rock veins or riffles to stabilize a down-cutting riverbed, or installing stone around scour-prone structures to protect the foundations. The conveyance of flood flows group, the purpose of this one is to increase space for passing water, sediment, large wood, and ice downstream during flooding. Some examples is to improve, so some examples include restoring local flood benches to erosion-prone confined settings to reduce flood velocities, and restoring floodplains to create more flood storage in a watershed to reduce that local erosion potential. And then the floodplain protection relocate roads group is to protect the space in floodplains and river corridors to keep permanent infrastructure and private property out of areas where inundation, erosion, and deposition are taking place. Some examples include adjusting the road alignment, conserving river corridors, and buying out flood-prone properties. And then the 4th group, mitigation strategy group, is used to naturalize the riverbanks and riparian corridors to provide the many benefits of vegetation, such as increasing bank stabilization, creating near stream habitat for roads, or excuse me, oh my gosh, for creating near stream habitat for birds and insects, and filtering stormwater runoff. So this group, alone, it's not applicable with, high flood velocities by itself, but it definitely can add as low or less, or help improve an area that is prone to erosion. The app goes on to allow these 4 groups of mitigation strategies to be filtered by different impacts. So you have, it defaults to the initial river impact. And so you can look at, if you're going to look at a mitigation strategy for a section of road, excuse me, I'm losing my place here. So what is the impact to the river? And it gives you a low, medium, moderate, or high. You can look at it how it would impact the transportation network. So is it just a small footprint of a change, or is it going to be a larger change to the transportation network, or is it going to be a major change or high? And then you can look at, the time frame. If you want to be able to implement some strategies short term, you can filter these strategies by short and long term. And then the project scale. So is it just a bridge? Is it a whole road segment? Would it be a river reach or an entire watershed? There's a lot of information, I'm sure. Hopefully when I show you the app, it'll make a little more sense. But before I do that, just want to kind of touch on how you can use this tool. So it can be a way to get a quick look at where your most vulnerable infrastructure is located. You could use it to help inform scoping for a particular project. You could use the tool to help in your capital programming and in your hazard mitigation planning. And this just kind of elaborates on more on how you can, how to use the tool as a resource in your town. Okay, so the current status of this project, there was a pilot done back in 2018, and these darker gray areas were the first pilot watersheds that were completed. And then in 2020, phase 2 are these lighter gray areas. And this is where a few of the regional planning commissions got involved in this project. CCRPC was one. We did this area here of the Winooski watershed, which included Richmond, Huntington, Bolton, for the most part, a few other towns a little bit. And then the phase 3 is making up the rest of the state, which is about 80%. And this is where a lot of the consultant work has taken over. The regional planning commissions have just been sort of doing, once the consultants have finished some work, they pass it to the regional planning commissions, and we would comment on some of the analysis, you know, maybe provide more damage report data, or I remember they had actually were looking at some proposed roads that, you know, aren't even existent. So I just marked those as, you know, it shouldn't be part of this tool. And the hope is to have the whole tool up and running sometime this summer. And then I'm going to, so these are some links. If you go into your internet browser and search TRPT, you will be brought to this page. I am going to go. Are you seeing my screen of 3 different maps of the state? No, okay, let me reshare. Okay, how's that?
Perfect.
Great. Okay, so this is the progress of the project as it stands right now. So the vulnerability analysis has been complete for the entire state. And now the network criticality index is in progress for this one down here. Everything that's green is complete. Everything's dark gray is complete. I think the light gray is what still needs to be analyzed for the NCI. And then where the application stands right now, the darker gray areas are available on the app today, and the purple are in the test app. And I'm going to show you guys the test app because it's got some features that will be available once everything is done that's not in the current app. So if you were to Google TRPT, you would get to this page, and it tells you a little bit about it. There's a link to the application. There's a user guide, which is really informative. It has some case studies that are great to read through, and then the statewide vulnerability assessment. But instead of going to the app that's available to the public, I'm going to show you this test app. And so this is what you'll get on the public facing app right now, where you can search for a town, you can choose a watershed. It also tells you how much of it is complete. So I'll click on the Winooski, and it will zoom to the Winooski, and it populates it with the data. What will be in the new app that's not available right now is a filter tool. So you can filter by regional planning commission, basin, VTrans district, town, or county. So I'll choose town, and then you just type in the town that you want to look at. and it'll zoom to that town, and it will turn off the data outside of the area that you filter to, makes it a little less busy. So right from this view, you can see that there's some red roads that have higher risk than these green and yellow and gray ones. This chart over here is displaying, so if you wanted to know, I want to know what the highest what section or what segment of road received the highest level of criticality and vulnerability. So that would be this. And if you click on it, it will highlight it on the map. So it's this road here, which is that Governor Peck Road. And then you can find out the details, like why did it receive such a high score? So it's considered to have a 6 out of 10 for the vulnerability. And you can quickly see, well, it's not really inundation, it's not deposition, it's erosion that is the concern. And then you can drill down to see, like, well, why did it get a 6 out of 10? There was not any past damage information, but there is some concern about the power of the stream power with the material in the stream. And the rest of it was a medium or low on the erosion. However, what brought up the score even higher was probably the criticality of it. It's pretty critical to the network. It got a medium, and it's locally important. So if you wanted to see, I just have to move okay, so then you could take a look at the strategies, and you could decide whether or not, which type of mitigation strategy you'd like to look at. And I went over the different types. There's those 4 different groups: river and road, flood flows, floodplain protection, and improving vegetation. And it's displaying or filtering it by that initial river impact. You can change it to see short and long term. So what's a short-term mitigation strategy that we could do? So you could armor the riverbank slope, which is short-term, or you could look at something more long-term. And it also gives some cost estimates for you to help with your capital planning. So this information is available. So I just had the roads turned on. Let's see, sorry, didn't mean to zoom the map too quickly. So you can also turn on the bridge data and the culvert data. You can just have bridge and culverts on, or just one or the other. And so the bridge data is the squares and the culverts are circular. As you move the map, the chart will change as you zoom in. This information will adjust to what is in your view. I had mentioned at the beginning of the presentation how you can look at the different storm events. So it defaults to that 50-year, but you can change it to be 100-year, and you'll see that the information changes based on the magnitude of the storm. So when you go to the 10-year, you really have no infrastructure that's very highly vulnerable, highly critical. But if you switch to the 100-year event, you get a little more at the higher risk end. Some other tools on here. So if you were using this tool and you wanted to share some information with somebody else, so if focused in on a particular culvert, you can show that and take a copy of a link, and you can share that in an email. And the person would click on it and be brought right to that structure. Hopefully, yeah, there we go, right there. Let's see. So these, you can also look at different background layers. If you wanted to see mile markers, you can turn those on. 911 buildings. You can turn on different boundaries if you wanted to. So it's a really powerful tool. There's a lot of information here. And I know I've been talking at you for a while. Is there any questions, comments, concerns?
And this is an awesome tool, really very powerful. The road network includes all roads?
It does,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
Yes, so if you, I believe that, something that's gray instead of, like if I were to click on there's just no vulnerability. So let me back out. You can see the entire road network for Jericho.
Yeah.
And so it's all there. I would guess probably private roads are not included, but all state, local roads are included in it.
That's great. Thank you.
Welcome. Wayne?
I'm glad you pulled up Jericho, just as an example, I guess, luck of the draw, but this is, especially for a small town, this is like having somebody on the road crew who's been there 30 years and the town engineer at the same time.
I know, it's really amazing, isn't it?
Pretty phenomenal. I'm gonna definitely make sure that our new road crew manager, who's wonderful, is aware of this. But I know, once, just to kind of spread the word, there used to be a yearly meeting of highway crews. COVID kind of dashed that on the rocks. But boy, if there's one planned for this summer or the next summer, it could be really useful for the RPC or even at the state level to just make the head of those highway departments. This isn't strictly in the purview of a highway department, but
no, but it's got multiple audiences.
If they were made aware of that, and then they're sitting in the town highway garage and checking some of this stuff out, it could really make much more informed, efficient decisions on their part. So anyway, just fascinating. Thank you.
You're welcome. And it's a good point about the road foreman meetings. I do believe we're starting those up again. And I would say that once the public facing app is fully populated with all the data, because right now, all that's on that public facing app, like if you were to Google TRPT and go to the link, it would just be that part of the Winooski that was part of phase 2. So I think that if we hold a road foreman meeting like in late summer or in the fall, it would be a great time to share this. Dennis?
Let me unmute myself. I think it's a great tool. I think it's super and appreciate all the work that went into it. I guess it's a little bit frustrating from the point of view that the police chief just sent us our first draft of, I think, the CCRP's emergency management plan that was done for the town. And yet this data probably, in terms of the risks that we have up here, this is probably the most important risk. And yet we've got an emergency plan that's almost written. And in my view, and I'm not trying to be too simplistic, but this could almost take the place of a lot of the stuff that's in that emergency management plan. So it seems like left
It
hand,
is-
right hand, you know, we're doing great stuff, but the other stuff that we're required to do for the feds hasn't really caught up. And we got to figure out a way to integrate this stuff. So from the management point of view, we're not spinning our wheels on emergency management plan on an issue like this, when we can call up the data and use that and put that quickly in the emergency management plan. It's just a comment, and I'm not sure how the CCRP is going to fix this, but I think it needs to be fixed, because when I looked at the size of that emergency plan, I don't even want to read it. It's so freaking long.
Oh, Dennis, is that the all hazard mitigation plan?
Yes.
So this tool should be mentioned in there. I did give the consultants background and a link to the website and everything. So hopefully it is in there. And if it's not, we will make sure that it is.
And I guess my only reflection is we could do a much shorter emergency management plan and reference the digital information, as opposing to having to write that all out in words and have a large document that is going to be filed away in somebody's drawer and only used if we have an emergency or if we're going for FEMA funds. It's slightly frustrating because this is so great. And I look at other tool and it's like, why are we doing this?
Yeah.
Just a comment.
Yep, yeah, I agree. I love the access to the online, but we always have to remember, you don't always have that digital access in an emergency, you know, if it's good to have it on paper too. But Charlie, you wanted to respond?
Just so you know, what happened there, Dennis, was Vermont Emergency Management chose an outside contractor to do that hazard mitigation plan. IEM is a consultant firm. And so, yeah, I think you're kind of seeing the outcome of that work. We'll try to do some work with them to make sure this is highlighted in there. But yeah, kind of, it got taken out of our hands largely, so.
Dennis, did you have a response or no? Okay. All right, I think that's it then, if there's no other questions.
Excellent. Thank you, Pam. That's great. The next item is the status of projects and committee reports, and I believe that was included in your packet. So if there are any questions, we can contact the individual planners for those projects. And then the next item on the agenda is the board meeting report. Charlie, do you have something, or is there someone who's going to give us a recap?
Yeah, I can do that, Barbara. I try to, in the agenda itself, I try to capture what the board discussed at their most recent meeting. So if there are extra questions, Charlie or other staff can answer those.
Hearing none. Are there any other items? And if not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. I don't see any hands. Amy moves to adjourn. Is there a second? Thank you, Sam. All those in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed, say nay. Abstentions. So we are adjourned at 10:18. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next month.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye, all.